It is time to continue on with our 2025-26 season previews today, and we have the New Jersey Devils. The Devils, I'm wearing my All-Star jersey here for New Jersey. I don't wear this often. It's the only All-Star one that I have for a specific team, so I thought why not change it up a little bit instead of wearing my regular home. But the Devils are certainly a team that is full of all-stars, I would say. But they do struggle with staying healthy, staying consistent through a full season, and also winning in the playoffs. The 2025-26 season previews are in full swing. We are now halfway through the league, and we are now on here to the New Jersey Devils. We have now done Anaheim through Nashville in the alphabetical order, so if you want to check those videos out, be sure to do so through the playlist of the channel. But that being said, let's hop into the New Jersey Devils, who are an exciting team, and they've been pretty good for the last couple of years. However, they do have their own issues with being good. So let's actually hop into that here. So in 2022-23, the New Jersey Devils went 52, 22, and 8 for 112 points. They were third in the NHL. They beat the Rangers in round one, but they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes in round two. And that was the first year in a very long time, since 2018, where the Devils made the Stanley Cup playoffs after taking draft picks of guys like Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes and a bunch of other picks there as well. You know, you had guys like Jesper Bratt and that coming up in the lineup as well. They have built this team together and have created a very well put together roster through Tom Fitzgerald, who we'll get into here in just a moment. And definitely it was a phenomenal season and things were looking up from there, but they would take a dramatic drop off the following year. And it was a mix of injuries and just poor goaltending. They went 38, 39, and 5 for 81 points. They were 23rd in the NHL. The biggest problem with the Devils up to that point was their goaltending. And that was the biggest thing we discussed even in the season, where they were third in the entire National Hockey League. It was definitely a problem that was developing for a while, and we saw it really in full effect here in 2023-24. Now, I will say that a part of the reason why they missed the playoffs that year could also be argued because of the fact that they had a ton of injuries. And that's something that has affected the Devils for so many years at this point. So I do want to factor that in there as well. But overall, it was just a very rough season. The following year, they would get better. They acquired Jacob Markstrom, and things were looking great. They went 42, 33, and 7 for 91 points. They were 16th in the league, so a 10-point improvement. They won just about 4 more games than they did the previous year. And overall, it was just a solid season from the Devils. They go in there and they lose to the Carolina Hurricanes in round one. Now, I say it was a solid season because they did get back to the Stanley Cup playoffs, but there were a lot of concerns that I had. First and foremost, they were phenomenal in the first half of the year, just phenomenal. And the second half of the year, and this has happened in 2 straight years because it happened in 23-24, they just plummeted. And I feel like it's a mix of just the inconsistency from this team and the injuries. They were missing Jack Hughes, they were missing Dougie Hamilton, they were missing Jacob Markstrom at one point. The fact that they made the playoffs was remarkable because I feel like if in any other circumstance, they miss, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that, like that's me saying the Devils team is bad, but my problem with New Jersey and the reason why I've been a little bit lower on them is just because of the fact that they can't stay healthy and they can't stay consistent. And that's something I'm going to be asking myself, and we're going to discuss that a little bit more here throughout the video. But when healthy, I think they're a top 5 team, but when they're not healthy, it's brutal. So looking at your management here for the Devils, you start off with Tom Fitzgerald, who has been the general manager for about 6 seasons at this point. He came in as the full-term guy in 2021, so he has been there for a little bit. He's made some very good moves, acquiring Markstrom, acquiring Timo Meier, and there's a few other ones that you can factor in there as well. So above all, I think that Fitzgerald has done a good job. There's been a lot of criticism, though, about his trade deadline moves and such, and you can definitely discuss that in the comment section down below. But regardless, I think he's done a good job at bringing this Devils team back to the playoffs. I know that he didn't do everything, but it's still something you want to keep in mind there as well. And then Sheldon Keefe is their head coach. He has been their coach since 2024-25, so he was hired last offseason. He did a good job this year, I thought. He was a good regular season coach for sure. I do have some qualms about how he didn't get the team back on track during the second half of the year, but I digress. It was an injury prone year for this team. So overall, I think the management is very trustworthy. It's not my most trustworthy management in the entire National Hockey League, but it is certainly one that I have trust in for sure. So looking at your key arrivals and key departures, and like Nashville in the last video, this is going to be a pretty short segment. So starting off with your key arrivals, you have Connor Brown, Evgeny Dadonov, and Juho Lammikko are the new players who have been acquired here for the Devils. So Connor Brown and Dadonov will be good bottom sixers, and you need players like that on your roster. So I got no complaints here with them acquiring those guys. Connor Brown has that Stanley Cup experience. Again, like going to the Stanley Cup final twice, even though they didn't win in either of those years, it still means something having that playoff experience for a team that most of these guys really haven't gone that far in the playoffs. So I think that does matter. Dadonov there, kind of the same thing. He's been to the conference finals a couple of times with Dallas, so there's that factor there too. And then Lammikko, decent, like, depth player. Honestly, really nothing important there in my opinion. Your key departures list, you have Erik Haula, Tomas Tatar, Nathan Bastian, and Brian Dumoulin are the guys who are no longer on this team. So Haula was a good fit for a little bit, but I feel like it was just time to move on. Tatar, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Tatar was all right, was a good bottom sixer. I just don't think he wanted to be with the Devils anymore. And then Bastian, kind of the same thing. He's been bouncing around a lot. He was with the Devils, then he wasn't. Now he's with the Devils again. He was with them for a couple of years. Now he is no longer playing. And then Brian Dumoulin was a deadline acquisition. He is off to Los Angeles, so he is no longer with the Devils at all. But overall, your key arrivals and key departures can be summed up in one clip. There's not a lot of importance, but I do think the players that they acquired are going to be good bottom sixers for this team. So that being said, then you look at the Hockey News' depth chart for the New Jersey Devils. Now I use the Hockey News' so I don't forget anybody or do something stupid, but that may happen anyways. So starting off here on your left wing side, you have Andre Palat, Timo Meier, Arseny Grisiuk, and I will get into him in a moment. You have Paul Cotter there rounding out your first four. Then you have Hallinan as your extra forward there on your left wing side. So Palat's been decent. I think he's had some good moments with New Jersey, but to be honest, the injuries have been an issue there as well with him. I remember in his first year when he was signed, that was looked at as a pretty good deal, and he barely played. Timo Meier definitely had my concerns, but when he is playing at his top level, he is a very good player. So I think that that's one of the things that I look at there too. Grisiuk is interesting. He was drafted in 2019 with Jack Hughes, and he has been in the KHL for the last couple of seasons. I feel like I've talked about him a ton in the prospect pool. It's like a yearly thing in the offseason to talk about him. But overall, he'll be a good third liner. It's kind of like hard to tell with some of these KHL guys like Shabanov with the Islanders and then Grisiuk as well. It's a little bit difficult to measure them. Some of them perform very well. Some of them don't. So we'll have to see what happens there with Grisiuk. He could be an interesting case. And then Cotter is a good fourth liner. I really got nothing against Paul Cotter. He's somebody who was acquired last year in the Alex Holtz trade. I thought that was a very good deal by the Devils for sure. And then Hallinan, nothing more than a depth forward, to be honest with you. Your center core is where it's the strongest on the roster. And I think, honestly, besides the blue line, when the blue line can play at its top role, I think this is the strongest part of this team. You have Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer, and Cody Glass rounding out your first four, and then you have Juho Lammikko as your extra center there, your fifth line center at that. So Jack Hughes, phenomenal. I'm going to have a question about Jack Hughes later on. My biggest concern is the concern that everybody's thinking about right now is, can this guy stay healthy? And I will ask that question later on. Nico Hischier has been a captain of this Devils team for a long time, is very good two-way. I still think he's underrated by a lot of accounts, by a lot of people. Definitely a top 20, maybe even top 15 center there for sure, in my honest opinion. Mercer, good third liner. He's had his struggles in New Jersey. I thought last year he did kind of bounce back a little bit, so there's that expectation there as well. And then Cody Glass is a decent fourth liner there too, so he was acquired at the trade deadline. I thought he was one of those guys who was a positive acquisition, and I thought he looked decent in the playoffs for the Devils there as well. And then Lammikko, just a fifth line center. On your right wing side, you have Jesper Bratt, Stefan Noesen, Connor Brown, Evgeny Dadonov, and Laguerre is your extra right winger as well. So Bratt is Bratt. He's a phenomenal, dynamic forward. He's one of the few guys who can stay consistently healthy. The other guys have kind of struggled with that, including Hughes and Hischier. I'm not surprised by anybody saying that, but regardless, Bratt is one of the key parts on this team, and he's the best right winger there as well. Nason, solid. I think he's a solid second liner. I know that he's a little bit like criticized. I feel like there's definitely better options for second liners, but regardless, Nason, I think gets the job done. He's a good middle sixer and produces fair for the Devils for sure. And then Connor Brown and Dadonov, I already kind of explained their roles. They're going to be good third liners. They bring playoff experience, which I feel like, again, there are players on this team with experience, but honestly, I think there could be some more, and it never hurts to have that, and they're just overall good bottom sixers. And then Laguerre's just a depth forward. So, honestly, I think, to be blunt with you, this is a pretty decent forward core. I do have my concerns, though, about their overall production, because on paper it looks great, but can they produce? Can they be consistent for a full year? That's the question we're asking ourselves here. Next up, then, we take a look at the blue line for the Devils. And I have some disagreements with the way the Hockey News ordered this, so I just want to preface that here. There is some things we need to discuss and things we need to look at. So starting off on your left shot side, you have Luke Hughes, Brendan Dillon, and Jonas Siegenthaler. And then you have Caden Addison as your extra defenseman there on that left shot side. So Luke Hughes is a very solid defenseman, but the problem is he's not currently signed at the time of recording of this video. And I haven't heard a lot about it, but the reason why is apparently due to some cap issues with the Devils, so they're trying to, figure out the salary cap and get him signed long term. So that's something that I would assume is probably worked out within the next couple of weeks, couple of days even, because training camp is not that far away. So we're going to really see what happens there pretty soon with Luke Hughes. Brendan Dillon, I think, is a solid and serviceable defenseman there. He can be a good first or second pairing guy. Siegenthaler, known for his good defensive play. He's been solid defensively at points. And then Addison, too, is an interesting case because I think he is a new acquisition, so I apologize for that. But regardless, he is somebody who has been bouncing around the league a little bit, was looked at as a solid prospect for a couple of years, but since then has really not been able to kind of keep that. So we'll see what happens there. But Addison overall is an interesting case there too. And then the right shot side, which is very, very deep. It is a deep side. You have Brett Pesce, Dougie Hamilton, Jonathan Kovacevic with an asterisk next to him, and then Simon Nemec and Seamus Casey are your extra guys there. So starting off on that right shot side, Brett Pesce is the best defenseman on this team, in my opinion. I think he's better than Dougie Hamilton, even at this point. I just think overall his defensive play is incredibly valuable to New Jersey. Hamilton, still solid, still can produce offensively. I feel like he is on the downside of his career, though. Kovacevic is actually going to miss the start of the 2025-26 season. So that's interesting there. But that opens a window for Simon Nemec / Seamus Casey. And there was a ton of criticism last year about Simon Nemec. I thought Casey looked good. And he's one of those guys where I'm a big fan of him. But with Nemec, definitely has some things to work on. I'm not saying he's a bust or anything like that, but he's been a little bit underwhelming, comparatively speaking, to some of the other players in the 2022 draft. So regardless, I think that's something you can monitor here heading into next year. But overall, I think the blue line, on paper, it's very strong and deep, but we'll see if that does transition to the on-ice product. Because again, I could say everything about, on paper so good and all that, and I've contradicted myself about that before, but can they produce? Can they play the right way on the ice? And then that being said, you look at the goaltending for the Devils. You start off with Jacob Markstrom. You have Jake Allen, and then Nico Daws are your first three. And then you have Jacob Malik as your extra goaltender there, your fourth string goalie, that being. Markstrom is good. He is the goaltender who kind of got the Devils to the playoffs last year. Again, I remember reading in the yearbooks and stuff for the Hockey News and reading a lot of the things and looking at the stats. If the Devils had even slightly better goaltending, a .900 team average in 2023-24, they would have made the playoffs. The biggest thing was the goaltending, and Markstrom played a massive factor in why that team even stayed alive against Carolina, but also made the playoffs, period. I know that he was injured for a little bit, so Jake Allen takes a factor in that, but it's true. And then Allen, solid backup. I think he's been serviceable. He's had his points of I don't know about that, but he's been very solid for New Jersey. And then Daws, good third string. And then Malik, don't really got a lot of thoughts about him. Just a fourth string, to be honest with you. But overall, the goaltending for the Devils is pretty solid. So time for the biggest questions. And these are two, big questions. So the first one involves Jack Hughes, and I said this earlier in the video. Can Jack Hughes stay healthy? It feels like every single season we are dealing with something with Jack Hughes. It was last year where he was found out he was out for the season, and then a couple of years prior to that he was out for the season as well. He has had times where he has really struggled to stay healthy, and that's a big factor. This is the most valuable player on this team. He is more valuable than Hischier. He's more valuable than Bratt. He's more valuable than his brother. He is the most valuable player on this team and produces a ton to the Devils offense. So when they lose him, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, if they lost him any earlier in the season, I think they missed the playoffs. Like, to be honest. I think they lost him at the beginning of March before the trade deadline, or maybe earlier, later in February. But if he was out, like, let's say in January, I think this Devils team misses the playoffs. That's how valuable this Jack Hughes kid is. So I think that really goes without saying. Can he stay healthy? I don't know. Like, I can't give you a clear answer on that. It's a matter of the way he plays. And I thought, honestly, the injury he had against Vegas last year was just honestly bad luck. And I think that's been a real mix of what the Devils have had here. Which brings me to my other question. Can New Jersey keep a consistent year? The last 2 seasons, the Devils have been one of the best teams in the first half. But in the second half, the Devils have plummeted. And in last year, not even including 23-24, last year they had a below 500, slightly below, but still a below 500 record in the second half of the season. And that played a massive factor in why this team ended up being a wild card team, because at January 1st or New Year's, they were literally top 5 in the league. And just because of them going on the California road trip to start the year and the injuries, it just all mixed up to be a disastrous second half, and they fell all the way down, and they were, like, if they were in the Atlantic Division, they would have missed. Just that's how wild it is. But regardless, it's pretty wild that they made the playoffs last year, and a lot of it was because of the overall just good goaltending on this team and the fact that they had a really good first half. So we're going to see what happens here in the future, but overall, that's my biggest concern is, can they keep a consistent 25-26 season? And that being said, it's time to ask ourselves the biggest question. Playoffs? Standings? Cup? Those are the things that we're asking ourselves here with the New Jersey Devils. So, playoffs, I think, is more likely than not, to be honest with you. I think it would take a lot for them to miss the playoffs. I think just like they would have to get injured very early and start off terribly. As long as they have a really good first half, and even like a middling second half, they'll make the playoffs. I think that's without a doubt. Standings-wise, I have them around the same as they were, unless if they stay healthy the full year. But just because of my concerns with the injuries, and I know like Devils fans are going to be so tired of hearing that, and I'm sorry, but it is a massive concern. It's happened the last 2 seasons where this team has just gotten either injured or goaltending screwed them. So I have my huge concerns there with this. I think if they're healthy, though, they can be a dangerous team. They are a dangerous team, and they're top 5. No doubt about it. Top 5, not just in the division, but in the league. So that's definitely something there you want to look at. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on the New Jersey Devils. I know I'm maybe like a little bit lower on them than some people, but I have them making the playoffs, in my opinion. I was a little bit too low on them on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago. They're a good team, and I think they should make the playoffs regardless of whether they get injured or not. Every team deals with it, so you just got to fight through it. But let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.